Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 293. Not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. Anonymous.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Blackbox. Blackbox is a new platform and community that is all about financial freedom for filmmakers like you. If you join Blackbox, you will be transformed from being a worker to being a maker of your own content. And you'll be making steady passive income from the global market. Blackbox currently allows you to upload your stock footage once, get it to many global agencies, and then allows you to share that passive income stream with your collaborators. Whether you want to submit old footage that's been sitting around in your hard drives or create brand new content, Blackbox is for you. It's really quite revolutionary. With Blackbox, filmmakers can concentrate on making great content while Blackbox takes care of all the business BS. Just visit www.blackbox.global to find out more. And today's show is also sponsored by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. If you want access to filmmaking documentaries, feature films about filmmaking, interviews with some of the top screenwriters and filmmakers in Hollywood, as well as educational online courses all in one place, IFHTV is for you. Just head over to indiefilmhustle.tv. Now, guys, I have a question for you. Have you ever been making a movie or a video or some sort of video content, and you're like, man, I wish I could get some good music. God, I wish I could find something that's not going to be super expensive, or I just want that one song, or I can't really afford a composer for this. What am I going to do? And then you have to end up going to some like really bad sound library or something like that that doesn't have anything really that great. I've had that experience myself, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. The process of music licensing and getting the rights to music, not only for like your film, just for film festivals, but then there's, rights for theatrical, there's rights for television and network and all this kind of stuff. And it's really just this hodgepodge of stuff. And not many people have talked about it. So I wanted to bring a specialist on, someone who deals with this on a daily basis, someone who could demystify the process of licensing music properly for films and what other options there might be out there for filmmakers. So today's guest is Chris Small from Soundstripe.com. Now, Chris has been in the business for a while, and he is very well versed on music licensing, specifically for films and other kind of video content. And Chris really kind of breaks everything down, and we get into the weeds a little bit about music licensing, but man, it is so important to understand this because it could hurt your sales. You can probably, I've seen movies not even get distributed because they didn't have the proper music licensing for certain things, and then it just throws everything out of whack. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Chris Small from Soundstripe. I'd like to welcome to the show Chris Small. Man, how are you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So
absolutely.
How are things on the West Coast?
The cold, but not cold like you're cold, but cold like our cold. So like we're
what's that like?
Like 60? 40 with sun is like oosh.
Okay.
It's rough.
That's cold. Yeah.
40s and 50s. It's actually been a really cold winter for us. But again, everybody in the north are going, just shut up, Alex. Just shut up.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So we're going to talk today a bunch about the wonderful world of music licensing and how interesting of a process that is. But before we get into it, you come to us from more of the music side as opposed to the film side. So how did you even start going down the road of being in the music side of the business?
Yeah. So I actually have been a musician pretty much my entire life. I started playing guitar when I was 8 years old and grew up playing in bands, doing the rock thing. I think probably it was around 10th grade. really started thinking, all right, somehow I have to turn this passion into like a career. So I kind of knew that was the direction I wanted to head down. So I ended up going to school here in Nashville. There's a school called Belmont University, and I studied music business there. And as are probably like 99% of the hopeful artists that go to school at Belmont to get involved in the music industry, you come in pretty naive and have no idea what you're doing. But I was fortunate enough after school to get a job at a record label. And it was one of the record labels in town. It was actually a Christian subsidiary of Warner Music Group called Word Entertainment. And I kind of cut my teeth there for the 3 years doing really not sexy things in the music business, like making sales phone calls and working spreadsheets and doing really not fun things. But I learned a lot, and that was kind of my first foray into the business of music. And one thing led to another through my own personal music pursuits and through connections that I had. Got involved in the music licensing space. And eventually through my own music, actually, wound up at Soundstripe. Nice. So that was in 2016, and I was originally a composer on the site, and that eventually led to an opportunity for me to exercise the other part of my brain and work on the business at Soundstripe. So that's what I've been doing since 2016.
Yeah, a lot of even artists in general, they always look at the sexy part of the business, and they never really look at there's a lot more unsexy stuff in the film business, in the music industry, and whatever artistic endeavor you have. There's always a business side to it. There's always grunt work. There's always stuff that is just not what they show on TV.
Oh, 100%, man. That's exactly right.
To get that artist on the stage singing, there's an army of people doing unsexy stuff.
Oh, yeah. And months of work and failures upon failures upon failures that just add up to that moment, Yeah, for sure.
No question.
For sure.
So let's talk about the sexy world of music licensing.
All right.
Can you discuss how a filmmaker normally has to license music for film or video? Because I know me being a filmmaker, I've tried to license film music for films, and even if I go after an obscure song where it was a hit back in the 50s and nobody really knows about it, and my last name isn't Tarantino, so it's just a convoluted process. So please explain to the audience what that process is.
Oh man, all right. So this is a very complex answer, or it's a really difficult thing. And I think that's why, there's so much like disruption happening in that space right now. But traditionally there are a few different ways that a filmmaker would go about licensing a song. And, you may do it by connecting directly with a composer. And this is still, I think, like a really viable, solid way, especially for those kind of like narrative based people that are creating films that are, maybe more dramatic or documentary or, anything like that, where you're working directly with a composer to kind of score your piece. And that usually I think would be everybody's choice, right? Like they have an awesome friend who's an amazing musician who understands the story and is super talented, all self-contained, sits down next to them and just writes for the piece. But very few people know that friend or have that connection or have the budget to hire a composer or a team to sit down and do it. So that would be step one. But outside of that, if you're trying to license a song that's like a top 40 track, like a Katy Perry tune or something, the challenge is that not only is that like just super expensive, but it's very complicated to acquire the license for that. You got to contact a publisher, negotiate a deal. Half the time that publisher does not care who you are. And if you're an independent or somebody that's like just now working on your craft, like forget it. That's going to be that's going to be a tough game. So what most filmmakers do that have any type of budget is they hire a music supervisor. And this is somebody who kind of already has those connections. This is somebody who can tap into their network of publishers or their network of libraries and actually negotiate those fees, negotiate the licenses. It's a very arduous and frankly not sexy job. And these music supervisors are really difficult to find and kind of expensive. So there's that. That's the way it's operated traditionally. And I think up until recently, maybe 2010, 2012, we started seeing really high quality music being licensed online for the first time. And stock music or music libraries kind of have this reputation of just being terrible quality.
Muzak style.
Man. It's just so, and rightly so, because most of them were, and most of them still are, unfortunately, because it's very difficult to kind of curate a library of music that actually has heart, that is actually real, that's made by artists who are like passionate about what they're doing and not just trying to make money. So there were a couple of companies that kind of jumped into that space. You can get music online and it can be highly curated for intentional, quality control, but also it's accessible to filmmakers. And I think what happened in that time period was the model, what that looked like, and how relationship between the company and the artist and the company and the filmmaker was still getting ironed out. And Soundstripe entered the picture in 2016 and really said, with a lot of this content that's being produced, people need access to high quality music and they need access to it in volume. And so that's really kind of where I think things are headed now, is the paradigm shifted to be able to provide affordable quality music for film.
Yeah, it's I've noticed that myself, just trying to get songs, and I have that relationship with a composer who I do call, and every time I call him, he's just like, "Oh God, it's Alex again. He's going to want me to do something for like next to nothing." But he is that friend that I do call, and I have occasionally been able to license a song by calling the artist directly. Like for my latest film, I called an artist directly because it was a very, very specific kind of song. But it's still a process, and it took me weeks to hunt people down and get it. It is a complex process. Can you also talk a little bit about the different rights that filmmakers need? Because a lot of filmmakers just think, I'll just get the rights, I'll just license something and I'm good forever and whatever I want to do with it. Like, no, it doesn't technically work that way, correct?
This is it's a complex scenario, but when you need a piece of music, what you need is a synchronization license, and that allows you to take that piece of music and associate it with film, with video, and that license, grants you the right to marry that piece of music, that composition to picture, and that's really the most important license that you need. And it's required for every piece of music that you want to put in your film that's not in public domain.
And then public domain's a whole other bag of tricks that we don't want to get into at the moment. That's a whole other world of crap that we don't want to jump into. But but the synchronized license for a film, it works. I completely understand what you're saying, but there's also different styles, like different levels of licensing. So like you can get the film festival rights, you can get theatrical rights, you can get VOD rights, you can get trailer rights to use it for the trailer. And then how long are those rights associated with it? Sometimes, I'm actually trying to license something for IFHTV. And it's an old show, and the guys were like, "Look, when we did this back in the 90s, we didn't think about VOD, so we technically don't have the music rights for that." I'm like, "Well, pull the damn music off, man." But yeah, so it is a complex thing, but that's something that I think filmmakers should really look after. Like, don't just get the film festival rights. I think. Do you agree? Like, that's kind of foolish if you're going to get them for the whole thing. At least, go ahead.
And this is where it's so complicated because, as a filmmaker, sometimes you don't even know what the end use is going to be. So basing the rights of that of that license on its end use is becoming more and more complicated as distribution channels continue to scale. So you have Facebook, and you may create something that you think, okay, this is going to be just distributed online to some friends, but then later on down the road, you want to go to a film festival or you want to do broadcast, and having to get different licenses, different rights for each one of those end uses is extremely complicated.
Without question. And then sometimes, filmmakers are, like you said, will just put something up on Facebook or on YouTube, and all of a sudden it's got 20 billion downloads. And all of a sudden you're like, I can't monetize this because now the right holders of the music is coming after me. And if you would have just licensed it, you would have had, an obscene amount of money.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
Now, what are some other pitfalls that you can think of that filmmakers fall into when licensing music? I think we talked a little bit about not just getting one license for one kind of like film festival rights or theatrical rights, but trying to get as broad of a license as possible for your music. But what are some other things you should look out for?
Well, you mentioned one that's still, I think, it's still getting worked out, but YouTube content ID is another thing that's like incredibly complex, and it's honestly broken.
It's
YouTube's
horrible.
Content ID situation, we've been in constant communication with YouTube, talking to them, trying to give them ideas, and also, trying to work out deals for our members and, and our artist community. And then it's just it's based on an algorithm. Sometimes a piece of music that's 100% cleared, 100% legally licensed will get flagged based on a sample that somebody used, and that sample was registered with some other, third-party content ID. It's just a absolute mess right now. And so that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes, like I said, if you could do everything right, and then you go to distribute to YouTube, and it's just terrible.
So, no, trust me. I deal with it on a daily basis. I put movie trailers up, or I'll put up the best is the commentary, like videos that have a clip of a music or a clip of a movie in it.
Yeah.
And the clip is 5 seconds in an hour long piece. And I get flagged, and I'm like, you sons of, this is fair use.
Right.
This is fair use.
Exactly.
Let's talk about fair use for a second.
Yeah.
What is fair use, and is it a myth?
I don't think it's a myth, but I do think that people misuse it. So technically any type of music that's put into a piece of film, that's not for educational purposes,
of course.
is requires a license. And fair use, one thing to just keep in mind about fair use is it's really kind of a defense. I would be, I'll put it to you this way: I would be worried or nervous, or I would make sure to really, really do before putting a piece of music film that's going to be distributed and not having a license, because you're putting yourself in a position of liability. And if you're having to exercise a fair use argument in a situation where you're getting a takedown notice, or you are getting confronted by a rights holder, obviously you don't want something like that to get in the way of you pursuing your art and releasing your product. So fair use, in my opinion, is really not a good argument to just use even just a couple seconds of a piece of music in your film, without actually securing those rights and that license.
Now, there is something that's always been very interesting. I've always found very interesting in the music business, because believe it or not, I actually dabbled in the music business early in my career. We will not discuss my singing career, but
are you about to sing for us?
No, absolutely not. I am a horrible singer.
We were singing Puddle of Mud before you jumped on here. For some reason, that song Blurry just came into our brain, and we just started singing.
But I actually played around in the music business and hung out and recorded and all that stuff when I was younger. And the concept of publishing versus performance of a song is a mystery, and people don't understand how important publishing is. First of all, because like the Beatles, didn't own their publishing rights, you know?
That's right.
And Michael Jackson bought it out from Paul McCartney when it went up for sale.
Yes.
So, and people are all like,
yes.
but that's the Beatles music. Like, how can they not own it? Please explain that a little bit.
Oh man, how much time do we have? Okay, so let me try and simplify. I think it often actually is confusing, and actually even trying to delineate or differentiate, like a performance royalty, because technically a performance royalty falls under the publishing realm. Mm-hmm. So in publishing, there are a few different types of royalties that can be collected. And kind of like managed by the publishing side mm-hmm. of the deal. And whenever a piece of music is written and then recorded, there are really two different types of intellectual property that are created. It's the composition, right? Like the actual notes that make up the song, mm-hmm. and then it's the recording of that song. And so because you have the composition and then the recording, there are all these different royalties and organizations and, publishers and record labels and people that kind of like manage royalty collection and distribution back to rights holders for each of these type of things. So when it comes to performance, it's really interesting because there are a few organizations that actually monitor venues and monitor, even like, theaters and bars and restaurants and track every single time a song is played in a public arena, mm-hmm. and a royalty is generated and then paid out to the rights holders, the publisher in that case. And so, then you also, of course, like we mentioned, synchronization, licensing, that's kind of handled under publishing. Print is another thing too that's handled under publishing, and that's really like the traditional publishing. If you think about what publishing was back in the day, was print. So that exists as well, and then there's the mechanical royalties that are generated from that, which actually have to do with the amount of times a song is downloaded or streamed online or anything like that. There's a royalty, a mechanical royalty that's generated in that case.
I remember hearing the story of, I think it was Bruce Springsteen, who like early on did not own his own publishing.
Yeah.
And he finally said, he talked to his manager. He's like, well, why don't I just open up a publishing company of my own and I'll just publish my own stuff. And now he owns it all.
Yeah, you're right. And it's such a weird game in the music industry. And most artists actually do that. They create their own publishing companies so that they can actually collect that piece of the pie as well.
Because it's a fairly big piece. If you go, like if you're licensing, well, like a perfect example was that Beatles song, Revolution, which Nike licensed when I think Michael Jackson owned it and Paul McCartney and the Beatles were pissed.
Oh yeah.
Man, they were pissed. But man, Mike pulled in a few mil off that at least. Just because he owned the rights to it. It's always fascinating, but I want filmmakers to kind of understand a little bit of the backdrop of how musicians get paid and what the world is. And, can you also tell me the average cost in your experience of what like a film festival rights for a song is? Because a lot of times filmmakers won't get the whole, thing. And they're like, look, we just want the film festival rights for it just to let us get it into Sundance. Let us watch it there. What's the average cost? I mean, because I know I have a number in my head. I want to hear what you thought.
So I feel like every single answer that I'm giving here is so ambiguous. So I want to try and be clear. Okay. But I will say I am not an expert when it comes to this.
Sure.
Like there are, and I think one of the things that Soundstripe kind of aim to do is take all of these, what we would consider to be very non-universal, or even take it as far as sometimes arbitrary fees on some of these licenses based on end use, and make it as simple as possible. So the simple answer to your question is it's a wide spectrum. So depending on the amount of people that attend the film festival, the amount, there's several different factors that kind of play into these fees. and there's not really a one solid, answer to the question, unfortunately.
Yeah. From my experience and from what I've seen, again, it so varies. And by the way, everything we're talking about is not a Katy Perry song. It is not a very popular song. These songs are from independents or just songs that are not as well known, but it ranges from $500 to $1,000. I've seen it all go all the way up to 10,000.
Right.
But it all depends on the kind of song and who you're talking to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it also is true though, and please confirm this or not, it doesn't matter if you use 5 seconds or the full song. It's still the same amount of money. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't put, and I will say on broadcast, there are certain, if you're talking about a broadcast situation, there are actually different fees that will be negotiated based on the length of the amount, or if it's a feature film. I know that's definitely always a big point. So there's all these arbitrary little things that have been placed to kind of really, really control, I guess, the amount that publishers and companies are able to charge for a particular use. And that, I think, was a really solid way to kind of do it for a while. But now we have so much content being produced and the distribution channels have changed to where broadcast is no longer really king, and so it doesn't really make sense now. So now you try to put that on the distribution system now, and you have situations where, okay, if your YouTube channel has 1,000 subscribers, it's this amount. Right. But if you have 10,000 subscribers, it's this amount. And it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
And no, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense in the least. So, I mean, we've just talked for a little while about the horrors of music licensing and how complicated and ridiculous it is to even get. So basically, now I'm telling everybody listening, just don't use music. Just don't use music at all in any of your projects. It is just shoot yourself. Just shoot yourself. No, I'm joking. But so we've mentioned Soundstripe a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about Soundstripe because when I first discovered Soundstripe, I was like, oh, finally something that makes sense. Can you explain what Soundstripe is and how your model differs from everything we've just been talking about?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the compliment. And thankfully Soundstripe, so we're advocates of the creatives. Like, our mission is to keep creatives creating. And, what we, as musicians, most of, like I said, the leadership team and the founders all come from the music world. And so we have a heart for musicians and keeping them creating and providing a consistent, stable income for music producers. And then on the flip side of that, we noticed this, what we've been talking about for the past, I don't even know how long, 30 minutes or so, the complexities in the content and licensing space. And so Soundstripe, what we decided to do was, it started honestly with a group of probably 15 or so of our friends here in Music City in Nashville, who were all producers and composers and writers and just kind of doing the traditional licensing game, pitching songs to brands like Coke and Kellogg and, landing maybe 1% of those pitches. And we decided to take all of these songs that were just collecting dust on hard drives, and heart, blood, soul, sweat, tears went into these things, and provide a no frills, simple, easy solution for content creators to use the songs in their films. And what we didn't realize at the time is that was something that people really wanted.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, I mean, within a year, it was very clear, okay, this is, not just a side project thing. Like, we need to really figure this out and create a resource that actually, is valuable and helps carry out this mission, both for filmmakers and for musicians. And so Soundstripe offers unlimited music for video for any use for $15 a month or $135 a year.
Stop it.
And
just stop it.
And and we just introduced sound effects too. So a lot of our independent filmmaking community is very happy with that. So in fact, I could probably tell you at the time of this video releasing, we're adding 10,000 additional sound effects. So now our total library would be about 20,000 sound effects as a part of our premium plan too. That's $245 a year.
But that's nothing though. I mean, for 245,
right.
like less than $20 a month or something like that, whatever the math is, the amount of stuff that you get is pretty insane. I actually have experience, with filmmakers who found, Soundstripe and decided to score their film based on the music. 'Cause you arguably could score your film with the music that you find on the service. I mean, you got to work around it. It's not scored for the actual image, but if the images match the music, you could find a composer on there and grab certain themes and literally score your music, not only with just music, but actual songs with lyrics, and people singing, for that funny scene, that romantic comedy scene, or that love scene, or that action sequence. It is pretty remarkable what you guys were able to do. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to partner with you guys. And I'm so proud to be a partner with Soundstripe to spread it's serious, because I look, Indie Film Hustle is all about providing value to my tribe and to any filmmaker or screenwriter or any content creator that happens to come across my little world on the internet or on a podcast or wherever they decide to find, or wherever they find us. So that's my mission. That is my mission in what I'm doing with Indie Film Hustle. And you fell right into that because it's a value. I mean, look, for $135 a year, you can score whatever. You can use music for YouTube videos, movies, music, promos, commercials, whatever you want. So if you have a small production company in wherever in the middle of Kansas somewhere, you can now provide high-end quality music for your projects to your clients. And now you look like you're Daddy Warbucks. That's a really rough reference, an old reference, but hopefully some people will understand what I mean. You're like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos in the sense that they feel like you have, oh, wow, look at this guy. They look at the kind of production it is. And I can never underestimate the power of good music matched with good visuals. It adds so much value and so much production value there. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Alex, I super appreciate you saying all that. And one thing I just feel compelled to kind of address, and this is something that often comes up when you juxtapose Soundstripe's model against what we've been talking about earlier. And that is, well, what about the musician? What about the money that's coming that they're used to getting? So, and I just want to reiterate that Soundstripe's mission, our purpose is to keep them creating too. So, we feel that in order to do that, what we have to do is actually place the value of what we're doing on the serving our members well and answering a really significant market need, and then finding really talented artists and really talented musicians who actually want to be a part of Soundstripe's culture and creating a community for them and paying them salaries, consistent W-2 on payroll salaries.
Stop it.
In order to write music for Soundstripe. So that's the model and kind of the mode that we've taken in order to kind of really put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and invest in the artist and the musician community, allow them to go get mortgages and pay their bills and not have to worry about when they're going to land the next Coke commercial. So that's kind of the way that we've decided we're going to do it. And I know that that's controversial sometimes, but it's honestly the fruit of that, and what we've been able to kind of see happen out of the artist community that have kind of surrounded Soundstripe and its mission has been amazing. It
is fascinating to think about artists actually making a living. Isn't that it's just like a wonderful idea of artists getting paid to do what they love to do. And I do love the model. I love what you guys are doing in regards to how you're taking care of your musicians and also taking care of your members. And it's a win-win for everybody. It really is a win-win for everybody. And, again, I'm very proud to be a partner with you guys. And, everybody listening, there's going to be a lot more content on IFHTV about music and sound effects and all other kind of stuff that we're going to be doing together with Soundstripe, and all sorts of cool stuff and things that we're going to be bringing to the tribe as well. So I'm very happy to be a part of be in partnership with you guys. I really am. And
likewise.
And I really hope that my next, all the videos I create, all the content I create will be using your music. Any films or anything else that I do from this point on will have some music. I do have my composer friend, but other than that, who will probably who'll probably just say, "Dude, just use Soundstripe and stop calling me." But again, thanks for shining a light a little bit on the ridiculousness of music licensing and how complex it is. And hopefully we could do some good out there with Soundstripe and what we're doing at Indie Film Hustle. Now I'm going to ask you for a few questions I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
And I'm going to change it a little bit because you're not a filmmaker, but what advice would you give an artist trying to break in whatever business they're trying to get in, whether that be a musician, whether that be a writer, whether that be a filmmaker?
Yeah, this is a good one. So I would say it's really about, I think there's this really amazing thing happening with telling compelling stories. And I think in the artist community, it's predominantly through content. Mm-hmm. And so I have lots of friends who are doing the hustle. I see your hat, by the way, hustle.
Yeah, hustle, baby.
I see lots of friends that are doing that thing, trying to make ends meet as an artist. And really, the best piece of advice I can give them is to keep building your tribe by producing content. Doesn't have to be super high production value. Even if you just went live on Facebook every once in a while and showed them your writing process, something like that, just keep them engaged and don't let months go by before you say, "Oh, I'm here and I have a song, a single I'd like to put out."
You're done.
You're done. You can't do that. You got to build that community.
Isn't that true? Like with filmmakers and with musicians and with writers, they're quiet. Hey guys, I just made this movie that cost me $250,000. Can you buy it?
Right.
As opposed to putting out content just nonstop and getting in people's faces and people understanding hey, oh, Alex is doing something, or Chris is writing, wouldn't it be cool for musicians? Wouldn't it just to just get a video camera and show the process of, hey, I'm making this new song. Here's a little behind the scenes, boom. And just keep pounding it like that. And all of a sudden people want to hear about what you're doing. It's kind of like almost a little reality show in a sense, using social media instead.
Absolutely. And it's hard work, but it's well worth it.
Absolutely. Now, can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career?
Oh man. So there's several, but the one I've read most recently that I can't stop thinking about is, there's an author, her name is Kim Scott, and she is a business author. She worked at Google and also Facebook. No, not Facebook, Apple rather. And she wrote a book called Radical Candor, and it's been kind of floating around in the software as a service, and a tech entrepreneur space, but it's really relevant, I feel, for life in general. It's a relationship advice book, honestly.
A relationship with your customer or relationship with a significant other?
These would be things like people that you interface with on a daily basis, that you want to establish meaningful connection to. So it could be an employee, it could be an employer, it could be a peer, it could be somebody you're working with on set, it could be a spouse, it could be a brother or sister. Anybody that you have a meaningful relationship or want a meaningful relationship with, it teaches you how to be honest with them and how to have a framework of communication and trust and transparency that builds relational value.
I'm putting it on my Audible list as we speak. It's called Radical Candor.
Radical Candor by Kim Scott.
Radical Candor. Okay. Sorry, guys. I just, when I hear a good book, I have to write it down. Next, what is the lesson that took the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in the music business or in life?
Oh man.
That's like my Oprah question. Like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
This is good. Well, I don't know if this is necessarily a lesson or a revelation. But I think what's been beautiful about Soundstripe and its culture is that we really kind of have one of our core values is keep it light, and it took me anyway a while to understand what the hell that meant. I was like, I don't know, but I think like what it actually means is just being real, being authentic. And so there was a couple of, and we actually practice that in our culture tremendously with one another, but also to our customers. Like we don't take ourselves too super seriously, but this is probably like a really specific answer.
Okay.
But I took a personality test called the Enneagram test.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Never heard of it.
Never. Okay. Well, it's just based on certain personality types, and that test actually, like when I took it and my wife took it, and then you can read kind of the relationship dynamic and things to look out for and things to, celebrate about each other. It was one of the most life-changing and kind of one of the most revealing things about myself that I had ever experienced. And I think we take it collectively. We took it collectively as a company. And that was something that I think from a self-awareness side, was super, super empowering and really, really interesting.
Very cool. Very, very specific, but very good answer, sir. Now 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh man. Well, definitely I'm a huge, I love No Country for Old Men.
It's made the list a few times on this show.
Which, by the way, has like very little music. Like, and I think that in itself is one of the creepiest things about the film. Is that there's like hardly any score. The whole thing is just like
it's all sound design and him just walking around. Hey, friendo.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. This one may be controversial, but I love Lord of the Rings.
The whole first trilogy.
Honestly, I love the first film the best. I think most people would say that. Well, I don't know if most people.
I like the third. I like the third film the best. I like the third.
All right, yeah. And I mean, I think I don't know. People either love or hate that.
There's no gray in the Lord of the Rings. You either love it or you hate it. And what's the third one?
Probably Jurassic Park.
Yeah, another one that makes the list quite often. Of course,
is that right?
Man. Yeah, man. That would.
Well, of course, that one. The score and just the whole thing is just classic.
But Jurassic Park's it's like when you first saw Indiana Jones, when you first saw E.T., when you first saw Jaws. Mind you, all those films were directed by the same man. So there's something to be said about that, Mr. Spielberg. Thank you. But no, it's one of those movies. It's just like, holy cow! Like, how is that a dinosaur? People forget now; they take it for granted. But back in '93,
I think you're right. Yeah,
'93. Seeing a T-Rex run around,
man, that was just so killer.
And you want to on the inside, if you notice in Jurassic Park, there's never aerials of any dinosaurs.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know why?
You're right.
Because ILM did not have the technology to do so.
Wow. Yeah.
They couldn't, the camera couldn't go up and they couldn't do with it. So that's why everything's always from ground level looking up or looking over, but you never see it from the air. So
stylistically it panned out, I guess.
It worked out.
Awesome.
It did okay in the box office. And then where can people find you if they want to connect with you and of course in Soundstripe?
Oh man, yeah. So I'll give Soundstripes out. I am terrible at keeping up with like Twitter and Instagram. Although you can find me, I think Small Chris is my handle. Small like the pizza. Yeah.
Wow, you use that quite often, don't you, sir?
I have to give my wife credit because she's the one who always uses it, and now I just have to use it because it's so funny. And she's also like really short too.
No, so. You know how many people call me like, "Hey, Alex Portia, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, dude, seriously, just come up with something original."
Yeah, but you can find Soundstripe. Our Instagram is Soundstripe Music. and our Twitter is Soundstripe app. And you can find us on soundstripe.com and browse our library totally free.
Awesome, man. And I'll put links to that in the show notes as well. Thank you, Chris, again, for dropping some music licensing knowledge bombs on the tribe today, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Alex, you're too kind. Thanks for having me, man. This was a blast.
I want to thank Chris so much for coming on the show and really educating not only you guys, but me as well on music licensing and the new options at Soundstripe that really helps get filmmakers such really high quality music for a very, very little cost. Now, I also want to announce that Soundstripe and I are partnering up, and they will become the official sound library of IndieFilmHustle.com. So if you want or need any music, any sound effects, definitely check out Soundstripe.com. I'm going to put a link to them in the description, and they're going to be throughout the site, especially in my resources page and things like that. And they are an amazing resource. I've been using all their music on any videos that I make from this point on, and have been actually for a little while in my podcast, in my videos on YouTube, or anything I'm doing with Indie Film Hustle TV. I am using Soundstripe music. And for $135 for an entire year, that is insane. And you can use that music for whatever you want, for however long you want. It's yours for life as long as you do it per project. And it's a pretty insane value. And that's why I decided to partner up with Soundstripe, because my mission for Indie Film Hustle is to help filmmakers get their movies made, help them build their brands, help them just survive and thrive in the film business. And Soundstripe is completely in alignment with that message and that mission of mine, because they are giving resources, giving access to things that generally and historically were not available to independent filmmakers. And it takes their projects up a notch or two, to say the least. Now, if you want to get links to anything we discussed in this episode, please head over to IndieFilmHustle.com/293. And also look out for special content that Soundstripe's going to be creating for IFHTV. And also I'm going to have some little bits on YouTube as well, helping us out with music, with sound effects editing, with music editing, all kind of cool pieces of content that we're going to be creating over the months to come. So I'm very, very excited about my partnership with them. And I really, really hope you guys find value in what they're doing over at Soundstripe. Now, if you haven't done already, please head over to shootingforthemob.com. It is my new book about how I almost made a movie for $20 million with a mobster, hung out in the mafia for a little bit, then got flown out to Hollywood, hung out with, billion-dollar producers, and I met Batman, and it's a whole story. But it's a great, great book, and I cannot wait to get it out. So if you want to sign up to be part of the launch team helping me launch the book, which comes out February 22nd, head over to shootingforthemob.com and you'll get a free copy of the book to read before anybody else does. So thanks again for listening, guys. And as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at IndieFilmHustle.com. That's IndieFilmHustle.com.